What's going on, everybody? My name is Curci, and For Honor. For Honor is probably the most fun that I've had in 2017 so far. Granted, I've only played 2 games in 2017. Vikings versus Knights versus Samurai. For the most part, it has a strong multiplayer element. In fact, I'm sure that's why the game was made. There is a story and a campaign to it, but multiplayer is why you're playing the game. So as soon as you start the game up, it throws you right into a tutorial, and it's having you learn about the mechanics of the game, which are crucial. At the core of it all are your 3 positions. You can go up, left, or right. And you can either defend or attack from that way. So if I'm over here on the right, I can either defend incoming attacks that are coming in from that side, or I can attack from that side. This is very important because you gotta know and you gotta anticipate what your enemy's gonna do while also keeping your enemy off balance. So like a lot of times I'll go into a fight and I'll just start rotating it. So it's like, oh, where am I gonna stop? You don't know. But you also have to anticipate that some of your enemies are gonna do the same thing. So they may have a position over here, but then they might quickly switch over here and attack. And if your enemy is blocking consistently, you can actually break their defense and go in for a quick strike. There are a lot of different layers to the combat and to the mechanics, but it all pretty much stems from what position are you taking here. There are light attacks, there are heavy attacks, and there's a little bit of comboing going on. It's not too terrible. It's not like A, B, up, down, left, right, trigger. It's just like 3 or 4 moves. It's like bumper, bumper, trigger, or trigger, trigger, bumper, or trigger, trigger, trigger. It's really simplistic for the most part. But whenever you're playing a new character, I would always recommend just take a quick glance at the move sets, just figure out what is at your disposal. Do you have any unblockable attacks? Are there any attacks that you could do real quickly? You gotta know some of these things. It's all gonna help you in fighting. But the game itself is actually really super engaging and super fun while you're running on the battlefield, while all these catapults and explosions are happening. You have your teammates by your side, and then you see an enemy player, and you're just like, and you just go after them. Parry and attack, where if you time it correctly, an enemy starts attacking, and if you go up and you hit trigger, you can actually throw them back. It'll stagger them a little bit. It won't stun them. Like, they'll be able to like get their composure pretty quickly, but it will stagger them enough for you to come in for maybe a quick strike here or there, just to keep them off balance. There's a lot of strategy in fighting. You realize this when you start going into like duels. Duels are good. They're like one-on-one fights. Most of the multiplayer is 4v4, but duels are one-on-one. So you go into duels, and that's usually where I go whenever I'm playing a new character. I'm like, okay, I took a quick glance at the move sets. I know what moves are at my disposal. Let me jump into here and just try to figure out how to control. I might lose a couple of times. I might embarrass myself, but eventually I will get to a point where it just kind of clicks and I get it, and now I can jump into the 4v4 and be an asset to my team. When you actually figure out how to play a character, that's when the game starts to become fun, because then you start getting into these really badass fights between you and another player. There was one time where I took on 2 players at once, where I'm just like, I'm not gonna run. Both of you, come get me. You wanna stay on the move. You wanna use the dodging. You wanna use the roll. Like, I'm a squirrely bastard. If I don't want you to hit me, odds are you're probably not gonna hit me. I say that, but there are times where I like embarrass myself, where I'm like, okay, yep, I rolled at the wrong time, or oh, I went for a guard break at the wrong time. You have to be very careful. You have to really be patient, time your attacks. Don't just keep an eye on your stamina, keep an eye on your enemy's stamina, because if they don't have any stamina, then you can go in and go for like a quick throw, like knock them down, and then they'll fall backwards. You can just go in for like a big strike real quick. There's strategy involved. There are different characters that you can play to kind of change things up. Every faction, and again, Knight, Viking, Samurai, they all have 4 classes. You have your vanguards, pretty straightforward for the most part. Some of them have different abilities, like obviously the Raider for the Vikings is going to be a lot different than the Warden for the Knights. Then you have your heavies. You have your Conqueror, you have your Warlord, you have your Shugoki. Every one of them is actually played a little bit differently. Like the Warlord and the Conqueror both have a shield. The Shugoki does not. He's just got this big ass like nail. It's a hammer thing. It hurts a lot. My point is that even though they're in the same class, they don't play exactly the same. So basically what you want to do in this game is you want to kind of play a couple of different characters. Like take it easy first, play a simple character first, like play one of the vanguards. You want to pick a character to kind of figure out how to play the game, and then once you figure out how to play the game, you get a handle for that character, move on to another one. And as you level up that character and get better gear, then you start performing better and you get a better feel for it. So you can always switch things up. Like I always switch around between the Warden, then I go to the Orochi, and I might go to the Lawbringer. You want to kind of change things up. You want to have like different variety. Now this game isn't a game that you can switch in the middle of a game, which does kind of annoy me a little bit, because there will be a lot of times where I'm going to play the Orochi and I'm like, I am really doing very poorly. I should probably switch to the Warden because my team is getting crushed and I'm not an asset. The game does give you like a million chances to be like, are you sure this is the character that you want to play? Because once you lock it in, you're locked in until the end of the game, which is sometimes annoying because again, like I said, there are going to be times where you're not doing well and you're like, I should switch up, but you can't. It's just the mindset that I got in because I was playing a lot of Overwatch. And whenever I'm not doing well in Overwatch with a certain character, I switch to a different character. It's not to say that each of the characters are complementing each other. Like, it doesn't really matter what your teammates play. It only matters how effective they are as that character. That's not to say that team teamwork is not part of the game, because it very much is. There's going to be a lot of times where I say to myself, okay, I should probably follow along with this guy, and we're going to team up on the enemy team, or, oh crap, there are 3 of them over there, I should probably avoid them, or maybe, oh crap, there are 3 of us, so we're going to scare those guys away, we should take the advantage and capture this point. But it gets really important when you're in sudden death. Basically, in deathmatch and domination, your team is trying to get to a certain score. Once that score has been reached, then the game goes into sudden death. Once you reach that, you're safe, but the enemy team goes into sudden death. So essentially, they're breaking, and all you have to do is kill their heroes, kill their player characters, and then you win the game. And that point in time, teamwork is very important. A lot of times, like if my team is starting to break, I will start looking for my teammates. In domination, the scoring system is not set in stone. It's a tug-of-war system. So if I capture a point, I can not only give my team points, but I take points away from my opponents. So if the opponents are at 1,000 points, which triggers the sudden death, if I capture a point and pull points away, I might dip below 1,000 points, and then all of a sudden my team can respawn. But still, you want to stay together as a group. You want to team up on them. You want to divide and conquer. If they are sticking together and they're starting to pick you off one by one, it's not going to be good. But likewise, if you're on the other side, sticking together to pick them off is a smart choice. Communication is pretty important in this game. Not essential to a good game, but if you have a team communicating, it's obviously going to be a lot more fruitful than if you didn't communicate at all. But that's going to be for every game you play. Even though teamwork is a strong thing in this game, and it is something that you have to take into account, you should also take into account of being a little bit mindful of what your teammates are doing. Sometimes jumping in on a one-on-one fight is not the best choice. As you take damage and get defenses, you are building up this meter, and when that meter gets full, you can go into revenge mode, which just gives you half of your health back. You're harder to kill, and you do a lot more damage. It's only for a limited time. It doesn't last very long, but when somebody goes into revenge mode, you need to be a little bit more cautious. And so if somebody is having a one-on-one fight and they're not losing, maybe don't go into that fight. Maybe stick around a little bit, maybe go somewhere else. Now, if your teammate is about to die, absolutely jump in on the fight. Help him out. But if your teammate has it under control and he is doing well, maybe don't jump in, because if you start jumping in and you're doing more damage and getting more blocks on that character, it's going to get them to revenge mode quicker. And when it gets to quicker, there are going to be times where somebody goes into revenge mode, and then at that point, they're able to kill both the players. I've done it before. But there's even more to the gameplay. I'm not even done talking about it yet. There are these things called feats, which are like abilities that you can use. Everybody gets 4 abilities, but when you start a game, they're all locked, and you unlock them by accumulating renown. Renown is just like, that's like the generalized points that you get, and you get that by like killing grunts or killing enemy players or capturing points. When you fill up your renown bar, you unlock a new feat, and then so you fill it up again, and you unlock another one, and you fill it up again, you unlock another one. And they vary depending on character. In each of the 4 slots, you can have 3 different selections for that thing. So if you do the math, that's 12 different feats that a certain character can use. So the Warden can heal himself, but he can also gain health by killing grunts. He can call in a catapult shot. He can throw a flashbang. And a lot of those abilities are going to come in at clutch moments. There have been times where both of our teams are in sudden death. I'm the last guy alive, and there are 3 of them. So I'll lure them into me, call in a catapult shot, kill them all. Boom, I won. I've done it! And then you are the hero, and you become the new king. That part doesn't actually happen. But the point is that the feats are really good to use to help give you the advantage in a fight, but also maybe sometimes get away from a fight. When you start the game up, it asks you to choose a faction. It actually has like this ongoing faction war going on. So people are basically fighting over territories, and once every few hours, the territories update, and then once every 2 weeks, the round ends, and then everybody gets rewards. And then at the end of 5 rounds, which if you do the math, is actually 10 weeks, at the end of 10 weeks, then it's a new season, and I don't know. I feel like that's like a little long. Maybe a round should just be 1 week, and there should be maybe 4 rounds. It leads up to a month. 1 month is a season. But then again, maybe Ubisoft is just trying to like push them along a little bit further to be like, oh, we don't actually know what we're going to do for the next season. Of course, what they could just do nothing. It could just be like, yeah, you just get a lot of rewards. At the end of every game, you get a war asset. Even if you win or lose, it doesn't matter. You get a war asset regardless. And you can either throw them down to defend a territory that your team has, or throw it down to attack and invade an enemy area. It really kind of adds up to nothing, but your participation does help in getting rewards, so sure. Speaking of rewards, there are different pieces of gear that you could put on your character. There is an almost RPG element to this game. As you play through games and you accumulate more of the in-game currency, you can get different types of gear. You can use that currency to get packs, and then those packs will give you like randomly generated stuff, so it'll just give you a bunch of random stuff. Sometimes you might get a rare here. It's higher end gear. But you can switch all your stuff out. It not only looks different, but it affects different things. Like it affects your overall attack, or it affects your overall speed, how quickly you regain stamina when you're exhausted. And then you as the player have to figure out, what do you want to prioritize? Do you want to prioritize getting your revenge mode to a Super Saiyan level, or do you want to just be like, I don't really go into revenge mode all that much, and also it doesn't really last that long, so it's not really important to go all the way in there. And also, like, I'm playing a heavy character, so I probably shouldn't sprint all the time. So speed, not necessarily a thing. But you want to prioritize to the thing that suits your playstyle best. But that's the multiplayer. But the game doesn't just offer multiplayer. And also with its multiplayer, like, I got the game and I went straight for the multiplayer and I stayed in it for like a couple days and then finally decided to play the single player. And even as I was going through the single player, I kept going back to the multiplayer. But there is a single player to the game. Essentially, it is telling you the story of each of these individual characters as they go through this one overarching story. It's not like, okay, here's the story of the knight going through his 6 missions. Here's the story of the samurai going through his 6 missions. No, it's like, here's the knight. He's going to go through his story, essentially setting up the Blackstone Legion and their like warlord or war god Apollyon. I can't remember exactly what they call her. And then they start attacking somebody, and then the Vikings pick up, and then they continue, and then they go through their story, and then the samurai pick up, and they go through their story, and it just comes into like this one big loop. Everybody contributes to the story a little bit. I feel like the Vikings are a little bit removed from the story. Like, I feel like you take the Vikings out, you're not really changing too much. You're changing the setup of the samurai, but you're not really changing so much as far as like overarching story. Yeah, the Vikings are here. We couldn't figure out how to properly put them into the story, so they're just here to serve as like a conduit to get from here to here. There are no standout characters, really. I mean, there are certain characters here and there, but they don't really develop them or really kind of, I guess, utilize them in the way that I was hoping that they would be utilized. It's not an award-winning story, but it was a lot more involved than I thought it was going to be, and as a result, I enjoyed it a lot more. But if you're expecting a mind-blowing story, it's not this game. You're playing this game for the multiplayer. The single-player story is actually just a bonus. So overall, is For Honor a great game? Yeah, it is. I got my voice all high right there. Like, the multiplayer is very fun, very addicting. It's really in-depth, and it just makes you feel like a badass. I almost want to grab a sword and fight somebody in real life because I feel like I can take them now. And also, the most important thing is that the game allows me to shout things a lot more. Charge! A lot of shouting in this game. Makes you want to just shout at your monitor every time you play. There's some RPG elements to the game. There's a lot of depth to it, which keeps bringing me back. I actually can't wait to see if there's any additional content. I would prefer, like, I don't really care for story DLC. Give me multiplayer DLC. Give me new maps, new characters, new game modes. Those are the 3 things that you need. So should you play For Honor? Yeah, you should, because it's fun. For Honor! Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.